man. That music always puts me in such a good mood.
I know, man. Welcome to December.
Welcome to December. Oh, yeah, it's December now.
It is. The last month of the year, closing out. People have they're doing two things. Focusing on closing out strong, or they've just mailed it in.
They're getting ready for January 1st.
Yeah, if everybody's mailed in, like, there's no point in starting doing anything of, anything productive or life-changing or just habit-forming. Christmas is coming.
Yeah.
And, we got stuff to do. We got, presents to buy and food to eat and things to drink and parties to go to and family to go travel and see. And what's the point in starting anything good? Because, hey, January 1st, that's where it's at. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to plan my plan.
Plan the plan.
Plan the plan. I'm going to plan the plan, and I'm going to put a lot of energy and a lot of time into planning the plan, because I definitely can't take that time to actually start the plan. I got to plan the plan.
No.
And that's this time of year. So welcome aboard the Crushing Iron Triathlon podcast. December. We are here.
We are here. Yeah, I talked to a buddy the other day, and he said, yeah, I told my wife the other day, if we can just, get through December, then we'll start everything. We just got, we got too much going on now. No sense in even getting in any kind of good habits.
No.
Hey, life moves quick, people.
Yeah, let's just give away a 12th of our year.
Let's just throw it away.
Let's just throw it away. Just toss it, and I'm going to venture to say that, and I think I'd be interested in hearing this stat, that December and March are two of the worst months for productivity in America.
March
Madness, baby.
Oh.
That 1 week alone, I think just bottoms out the entire month.
Yeah.
Nobody does anything. Because people who aren't even really sports fans, they bag it. Because, they'll it's like my wife crushes me every year when we do a bracket because she picks the most random crap ever. Their mascot is cute and I love their hat. Win. And then they make it the Elite Eight or something. But I think these 2 months with holidays and travel and you got end of the year parties, all kinds of fun stuff. It's a good month.
Yeah. No, it is a good month. I feel like other countries kind of just, how they is it Mexico? They always throw in a siesta. They just own it. A lot of other countries will have that afternoon nap just sort of built into their culture. Mm-hmm. Whereas we kind of build it in with things like March Madness, and we just sort of throw these events in there that are kind of make it sort of okay to be, not focused on your job or whatever the whole time, or Christmas parties. It's okay to go into work and not be productive today, but instead of just trying to create a lifestyle that really is more applicable to humanity. It's we're human and we need breaks and we do need some rest and things like that. But
we just don't like creating anything that's repeatable.
Oh.
Most people don't. Most people are making these, more than they're making outrageous plans. I'm just gonna basically scuttle everything that I basically know I do, and I'm gonna revamp my entire life. I'm going to give up this or start taking this, and they go 100% in without leaving any room for things that allow them the opportunity to continue consistency. It's really just setting yourself up for failure by way overdoing and putting way too many expectations on a new plan or a new change that's honestly, that's why I don't think people fail at their New Year's resolutions or their new training program or whatever because they become uninterested. I think that they change too many things at once. And it's we're all good at consistently, I think we're all good at one or two things. And I think what oftentimes gets lost is people tend to go away from those because they feel like that hasn't worked, or it's not working well enough. And then the rest of everything else falls apart. But sometimes, honestly, just inserting one thing of positive change or something that can make you make you be more consistent. Like you had brought up a couple weeks ago, your 100-day running challenge, which is extremely popular this time of year. Even
not
for
with
like,
me.
not with you, but like for, I've had some athletes do it, or some athletes do, like had another athlete who I think at work who was going through like she had signed up for Ironman Florida, and then all the changes happened and she wasn't really able to make it, so she transferred to Texas. So you went from like this huge end of the year build to okay, now I got a little break. And you need a little break. But so motivation is lacking because now she's not racing Texas, and so she was kind of struggling a little bit with motivation. And then all of a sudden she started this. I think it was probably through work where they're trying to climb Everest. Like every day you do, I think it's like some kind of ladder thing or whatever. But you basically have to get to the top of Everest elevation wise. And that's the only thing that's changed. And it's actually added exercise and training volume to her plate, because I'm not including that into what I'm giving this athlete training wise. And ever since she started this, she's hit every single workout. And I think a lot of times we totally, like I was saying, like revamp everything instead of trying to keep like the core things. Because sometimes all you need to do is make a little change, a small change that's going to affect everything else in a positive way. Versus, it's like you might not need to revamp 90% of your lifestyle, and keep 10. A lot of times you might need to just keep 90% of your lifestyle and create a new 10%. In that 10% focus, because it's so much smaller and so much less it usually creates so much less pressure. It usually seeps over into having a much better effect on the other things that you're trying to execute, especially if you're trying to do something based on consistency. Consistency breeds consistency. And you just like the feeling and the habit, because it's habit forming and can be habit changing for a lot of athletes, that a lot of times it's like you crave that consistency. So if you're doing it in one thing, I think it's just a lot easier to find harmony in the other things in your life that you're already doing well, or that you want to do, rather than changing the whole for just a very small part.
The big changes can be daunting, and that is what I think I told you I'm back into my meditational stuff, and
yeah, dude, let me just share the story.
Okay.
So, talking about Mike's like meditative power. So we're texting back and forth a little bit, and I know we said we weren't going to talk about football for a lot because both of our teams suck, but we're watching the SEC championship game, and we're texting back and forth just a little bit, and Mike sends me a text like, yeah, I wish, something to the effect of like, I kind of wish Jalen Hurts would like come back in and be able to save the day. Let me just see if I can read it just verbatim here, because it was what did you say?
That was pretty...
Oh, yeah. It did. 6:06 p.m. Text message received. I keep waiting for Hurts to come in and save the day. 2 minutes later, Tua goes down, Jalen Hurts comes in, and indeed saves the day. I texted, I said, that's some real voodoo shit, Mike, and he said, yep, the meditation is paying off. And it's just, anyway, but I thought that was an incredible order of events. But yeah, the meditation's working, man.
Yeah, it's just that when you're talking about small change and things like that, that's the thing about meditation that really intrigues me. And when I'm in a groove, I just sit, like, that's the thing too, is if you try to do a change like that, and it's the same thing, you'd be like, I haven't been meditating in a while, I'm going to sit tonight for 35 minutes, or I'm going to sit for an hour, and you just can't do it. So I've just been trying to, when I get the chance, or when I'm sitting there like walking around going, what am I going to do next, or whatever, I just go sit for like 5 minutes or something. But what I've found in there is an increasing amount of intrigue about what I can uncover. And it's just, because if you go in there and start meditating and just because I think most of us in life in general, we just we want to feel better. That's sort of the goal. I think that's applicable to triathlon because I think that's what we want to do is we want to feel better. And what we have to remember and what I'm trying to remember as far as like meditation and stuff is that in our core being, like our purest state, like when we were a child and when we evolved, that is the state of happiness and contentment and feeling good, and we just have to basically uncover that again. I mean, to me, it's like shedding layers, and I'm starting to look at things like that in terms of when I meditate. It's sort of just like letting the false beliefs or false like pulls of society just fade away and just get back to that sort of center of who we are and that feeling. Because it really, I mentioned, I think I was talking about before as far as like energy and stuff like that, but if you've got all these different types of things that you feel like you need to be doing and the pressure of like, I got to do that and I got to do this, and so that you're not in the moment or whatever, and all that energy is being, it's kind of like, tugging at you from every different angle, and you're not in the place that you need to be. So it's really difficult to focus on what you're doing, and little changes make that so much more manageable. And I think that's the key with, that, like you said about climbing Everest or something like that. Just do some stuff like that. Get in a groove with something like that, and then it's like, hey, that feels pretty good. I think I'm gonna go run a couple miles or whatever the case may be, instead of running 8 or 10 miles because you're behind in the progress.
Well, it's just proving to yourself in an attainable, achievable, and like setting yourself up for success way that you are in fact capable of being consistent. Mm-hmm. Like there's like when you do little things like that, it's like, oh, well, if I really, really want to, I can be consistent. Mm-hmm. Like and I can not miss, and I can make time, and I can, it's like, so it's like shining light, because let's be honest, that's what most people do when they make these resolutions is they nitpick and they tear apart and they do surgery on their whole behavioral instinct or failures or successes, and rip apart and strip down to all the things that they don't do well.
Yep.
And if we're being honest, like, there's just always going to be things that you don't do well, and so a lot of times, do you want to, do you want to mitigate the amount of impact that those, shortcomings or just those weaknesses have in your life? Sure. But you also don't want to totally negate your strengths by continually just ignoring them and not maximize them while trying to just always turn the page and like turn a 180. Because turning a 180 is difficult. And I think what an even better way to start is, all right, well, instead of just ripping to shreds all the things that I didn't do well this past year, tell me what you did well this year.
Yeah.
Like, let's get to the root of all the things that you, in fact, did succeed in. Was it staying healthy? Was it making good training decisions? Was it being consistent? Was it, executing a race? What, all these different things. So tell me what you did good this year. And then let's figure out how we can apply those, mental, emotional, and physical successes and the approach that you took to them to areas in which you want to improve on, instead of looking back on your and thinking, all right, I failed in all these areas, where the hell am I going to start? When the reality is you've already set the roadmap of what it takes for, because listen, everybody is different. Everyone is motivated intrinsically and extrinsically by totally different things. You can push, like, everyone's button's going to be pushed by something different, good and bad. So instead of trying to go through this like incredibly exhausting investigative approach to what I suck at and how I can fix it, you have a path of proven success laid out in front of you. At least I'm sure, because I'm sure your whole year wasn't a failure. I'm sure your whole year didn't suck. Mm-hmm. And if it did, I'm sorry. But most people's didn't. Most areas you can find ways I did this well. So you have a roadmap that a lot of times, and this might sound just like too simple, but if we're honest, lots of things in life are simple. We just overcomplicate it. Just copy and paste. Just copy and paste. Copy what you did well, paste that exact strategy, and just remove the word. And, I did great in swimming because of this, and this. To just copy and paste into I can do well in running because of this, and this. And then just repeat it. But again, that's why so many diet hacks and cleanses and things work well, because they work well in the short term, because that's as short as you can stand to do them. They're 2-week plans and 7 things. That's about all you can take of it, and then you got to be done. And so you might feel like it's a short-term success, but that's it's no reason why the moment you start to go back on a normal diet or normal training, things change. And so it's about creating lasting, sustainable change that depending on what time of year your race is. And this is something that I think a lot of athletes struggle with. And just something that I've come to accept in the last, probably a couple of years, is just because your first race is in May doesn't mean that's your main goal. We've got a ton of athletes doing Chattanooga 70.3. I think we'll have maybe 50 or 60 there. So that's the first big thing on the radar for a lot of athletes. But that's not the end goal. And so a lot of times you'll find athletes rushing their way to be ready, just to be ready to look ready, because they know people are going to be watching. They know there's going to be some pressure, but listen, so they might start longer runs or longer rides or harder stuff earlier than they would, and not continue on their periodization or the training block that they should, because it's just a microcosm of how we live. Is they're just more worried about short-term optics than the long-term vision. So if your race is in October and your main race is in October, you've got to keep that long-term vision and care less about the short-term optics. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I really like that.
But it's just hard. I mean, it just we always say oh, these things are so simple, and then we're but it's hard because it is, because it's so. You had such a great line this last podcast. Is by the amount of focus and restraint and confidence it takes to just do you it's enormous, I think. And I think it gets harder as the years go by with so many other things we have going on in life, that you have to really deep down know. So when you set out your goals for this next year, find one that's the biggest and most your big hairy goal, and base the rest of your year around it, and just understand that these races will be what they are. But if your ultimate goal is to execute X, Y, and Z on this specific day at this specific time and this specific distance, then everything that you need to do leading up to that is here. Don't shortcut the long-term success of what you really want on that one day for a short-term need to basically just, fill your ego for the moment, when you probably took a shortcut on something important.
Yeah, that's focusing on the wrong, things. It's kind of like if you're talking about, the example you just used with 70.3, people, that's focusing on the faults instead of what's good inside, and that good, what did you do good, and what can you do good, and what are you all about, and what makes you feel good, and what makes life run more smoothly. Mm-hmm. Those are the things that need to be focused on, not how can I. Oh man, because it just creates tension in your body if you start thinking about, man, I got to show up and I got to be looking good for all these people, because I want to make sure that I get to that race and I am, I can impress people, or whatever the case may be. If it's ahead of your game, it's just throwing you out of balance. And I think balance is such a key to thing to life, of course, but to training as well. I mean, if you're gonna start jumping ahead, it's just gonna naturally throw you out of balance, and then you're gonna be playing catch up, and the next thing you know, and we haven't really referenced that Cody Beals article or the post that he had, but he was talking about how he goes by feel a lot, and how he is kind of a wild card as far as adjusting his workouts every few days sometimes and every day sometimes, and how his indicators are as far as when he knows he's off track and stuff like that. And that's kind of what that reminds me of, and how you've always, your custom coaching, and it's not like you just lob in 20 weeks of plans and say, go to work, people, and it never changes. It's your coaching is a breathing, living organism that kind of adjusts to what's going on, and takes into consideration all kinds of life forces and things like that, and doesn't let people get too far out of whack. Yeah,
I mean, first off, if you haven't read, you can go to his website, codybeals.com, and he has just really an off-the-charts read with so much valuable information and insight. And I'm sure when most people click on it, they're like, ooh, Anatomy of an Ironman Win Part 1. They're like, I'm going to get so many like secret workouts, and I'm going to, this and that. I'm like, it's just like the whole entire time I was reading it was just utter respect over his amount of self-awareness.
Yeah.
And which is ultimate confidence in the changes he can make. And I couldn't be any farther from Cody Beals' spectrum of an athlete, but I'll do that sometimes as I coach myself. Like if I know I'm supposed to hop on and do a hard trainer ride and I just can't, I'm just not feeling it, then I'll just mentally in my brain make a switch. Today's my easy day, and I'll have that at the next day. But his just overall approach I thought was just fascinating. He even talked on his post about meditation, and then what I found really, really intuitive was just like what he called like his mental interval training, which I thought was just so on the point. But again, I think some athletes would be disappointed in reading it because, he uses phrases like, you'll see no epic training days. You'll see a very polarized approach where most of my 80 whatever percentage of my training was in zone 2, or very small in zone 1. He did talk about the differences and threshold to work when he switched from 70.3 to Ironman training. But he talked about running 7 to 9 times a week for 70.3, which are probably shorter ones I would imagine, and then 6 days a week for Ironman training. So it's just like, wait a minute, it's like he's just kind of doing he's doing everything a lot of athletes are doing. He's just doing all the little specific things totally right, where other people just get misguided and fail to have awareness and confidence. But his whole approach. So if you can always go to his website directly, obviously, but I posted it on our Crushing Iron closed Facebook group on Facebook. So if you're not a part of that and you want to, you can just go to search Crushing Iron group on Facebook and search it out, and we'll let you in. But I thought it was just really insightful. But it's just about a lack of awareness. And just the amount of confidence it takes to have your own awareness, not somebody else's, or have your awareness not be affected by everyone that you're aware of. That's probably a better way to put it, and not have it like shifted, and not have things go, just get wrapped into something. You're wrapping a gift that you're not trying to give yourself. You're wrapping a gift to give someone else. Which is there's nothing wrong with gift giving, but when you're doing and making these plans for you, it's about doing the best that you can with what you have, and not taking the shortcuts when you like, if you're sitting there thinking, but yeah, like, and I deal with this, like every coach deals with this. They get like a conversation like, well, I've got this race coming, why haven't I done this, and this? And so many times you're like, well, listen, we have this race, but while you're thinking of this race, I'm thinking of this event that is your ultimate focus, of which you're probably going to measure your year of success or not on. That's still 3 months away. And so to prepare you for what we need to do in 3 months, we need to continue to do X, Y, and Z versus jumping the gun on this specific short-term race that's more there. I would call it more, it's event management, not race management. Because I think doing an event is much different than choosing to race one. But as a coach, and I know a lot of coaches deal with this, it's just like, remember, I've got to have the long-term vision. And that was like, I think one of the very first conversations you and I ever had was, yeah, you're doing Muncie. That was your first 70.3. You're doing Muncie. You're doing this. But the whole time we're training for Muncie is like option B. Wisconsin is option A.
Mm-hmm.
All right, pause. Let me tell the door guy to go up back real quick. Hold on a second.
Okay.
All right. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Sorry about that delay, people.
Oh man, hope you had them enjoy some hold music.
No. Okay, you were just saying Wisconsin was
I said while we're thinking, I said we're training for Muncie, but it's always Muncie option B, Wisconsin option A.
Right. Yeah. And I've been talking to a lot of people in the club about that, actually, about, they have an Ironman and how we're going to work these plans around it. Well, you work that plan you work that 70.3 into the whole scope of things. Back to the Cody Beal thing. I gotta say, reading that really made me feel pretty good, actually, because that's, a lot of stuff he was saying is, how you read something, it's like, man, that's kind of how I was thinking about a lot of stuff. I just couldn't articulate it that way, and
God, no kidding. Yeah, he
really hit home with me on so many things, because there's the little things like sometimes his visualization, for example, and how he talked about trying to put himself in a race during tough training runs or tough rides or things when he wasn't feeling good, and those types of practice sessions, that kind of stuff really hits home with me. I used to talk about, like, sometimes I would wear uncomfortable socks or whatever to sort of replicate my the end of my run and how my feet would feel and stuff like that. I don't do that all the time, but I've done that by mistake, or just put the wrong socks on or whatever. But instead of, like, throwing in the towel on that, I use that as a mental training exercise or something like that, and the other thing was like that flexibility and going, like he was, for lack of a better word, he kind of like professes sort of love for himself, in his training. He doesn't take it. You always think about. I think that when people think of coaching, sometimes in general, you sort of have this immediate thought of the Russian gymnastic coach or Woody Hayes or Bobby Knight or these types of coaches that are just drilling things home and making you work around the clock and practice after games and like that kind of intensity. But it's like that's one thing, I guess. Like we talk about the Olympics, if you're training for the Olympics and you have one goal or whatever, that's one thing. But the other side of that coin is these people usually get burnt. Now, like if you look at most of those types of coaches, the second part of that equation is that you always hear the athletes quit the sport, never wanted to go back into it again. They moved away into isolation and just like hated athletics from that point on. Those are the kind of like secondary stories you always hear. So with that in mind, keeping a love, it sounds a little cornball, but I think that there has to be a deep appreciation and love for yourself in the sport, because if you're not coming from that place, you could be, acting for others or manufacturing reasons to do things that aren't really in alignment with who you are.
Well, and you're totally right in that athletes, saying, this coach is just going to tell me what to do and I have to do it. And I would just like, coaching is, and again, like this all goes back so much to every athlete's personality. I think it's always a struggle for coaches, either consistently or just kind of rears their head and they have to remind themselves, like, I'm coaching you for you, not me. Mm-hmm. And I'll admit, I think some coaches totally lose sight of that, and the coaching becomes all about them, and they could care less about the athlete. But when someone asks you to coach them, it isn't about you as a coach; it's about them. And every person is different, and every personality is different, and their wants and needs and desires are different. What they love and what they hate are different. They might love swimming and hate running. They might love running and hate swimming. You have to, like, you as a coach, coaches don't make athletes what they are or who they are. You like you said, like, you're making it yourself, and he's just like, you are the way you are for a reason. It's a coach's job to allow you the opportunity to grow as best as you can, being healthy and happy and succeeding as best you can within your not constraints, but it's almost like within your own personal style. Like, some athletes, they have big goals, but they just refuse or don't want to do X, Y, and Z because they just have like an aversion to it. And so while you can listen, there's a certain extent to where you have to get through to athletes, like, I understand that you like to do this, but it's going to impede your progress and you're probably going to get hurt. So, like, again, like, so much of coaching is also do no harm. Like, do no harm could also be, in two ways. It could be do no harm as in don't train your athletes into the ground and have them get hurt 24/7, which is common, unfortunately. But do no harm is also even more prevalent in the emotional and mental growth that you should be helping an athlete establish. Like, your number one objective, yes, the physical is important, but mentally and emotionally, your athlete should hopefully be growing too in a positive way. Building them up, setting them up for success, allowing them to gain confidence, allowing them to feel more empowered, to where this relationship isn't a dictatorship, it's a partnership and a relationship. And then at some point, the athlete can kind of like almost take the reins while you just make sure it's steering in the right direction, and they kind of go in their own flow and in their own style and achieve it. Like, you want them to feel like they achieved it. You helped, but they ultimately achieved it all on their own, versus I owe it all to you. Because that's just not the case. But the athlete needs to feel and kind of be able to mold itself to those things. And that's where so many people, like you were saying, end up putting themselves, like, it's the old, round peg in a square hole. That's athletes, and that's training to a T. So many athletes that are really at their core, round pegs, spend so much of their entire athletic career trying to shove themselves into a square hole, and wondering why it's not working out, because they tried to take who they are and what they're good at and what they love and what they need to do and shove it in what they see, when a lot of times the answer is just a couple pegs over, but we lose sight in that so often.
We want to enhance our lives and be healthier and happier, and so many times we lose sight of how, I don't want to say easy that is, but we make it more complicated than it needs to be. And when I talk to people, like I've been talking to people in our new club program, which you can find out about at crushingiron.com, and it's basically access to all our training plans and consultation with me, and then we do a custom 12-week plan up to your A race, and the club group and other kind of things, a lot of advantages that a lot of our athletes have, the custom coached athletes. And when I hear them say, I like, you're doing Ironman blank, what's your goal in that? And they say, well, I'd really like to get under 15 hours. And I'm like, that that just feels real to me, like it's a so many coaches, I feel like, would look at that and say, well, they want to coach because they want to create an athlete that's, moving towards Kona or something like that. And I don't even look at it like that anymore. I think about, like, what do you think? Maybe 10% of people that enter that race really think they might have a shot at Kona? On 10% of people that do Ironman.
Think they do,
yeah, or like have that
truly
as
believe that they do. Like,
right.
I'm sure a lot of people will think it, and they end up in like the top 30. I'm like, that's not even close.
Yeah, kind of like me.
You need to be able to be top 3.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that innately from that's sort of, I don't know what that comes from, but I always think that I got a shot. I'm on the upper, but it's just refreshing to hear people, because I think that's synonymous with, I just want to feel better, and I want to do some things and get better in my life and feel healthier and things like that. And that to me is like ultimately the goal, regardless of what you're shooting for, because you just don't want to dig holes and and like you're saying, force pegs in the wrong holes, and then that just becomes a complicated mess. It's just more about being like your authentic inner self or something like that. And I know I'm really on this sort of spiritual meditational thing right now, but man, it's so important, I think, because once you can kind of come to terms with that, I just feel like it makes things easier, because there's just not this external pressure on if you're comfortable and in that place with who you are, and okay with the idea that the outcome isn't the judgment day sort of thing, it just becomes easier. And I think that ultimately makes for better racing and better training, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's called fun.
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah,
it's like,
let's not forget who we were. We were kids, and that's why we do this.
Like, I mean, it's fun. Like, having no agenda, no expectation is fun. And doing something for just the love of it is fun. I mean, and I think you just lose sight of it, because you start to take yourself too seriously, and then you remember that, oh, wait a minute, I actually pay thousands of dollars each year to do this sport, and nobody pays me. So maybe I should just chill out for a second. But it's about keeping things fun. And honestly, I think that so often in life, like one of the greatest strengths that you can have, if not the greatest strength that you can have, is understanding and recognizing your weaknesses. But no one likes to have that because they want to admit they either know it or they can do it all by themselves. They don't need anybody else. They don't need you for help. They can figure it out, or they'll just not do it in fear of failure. And that's athletes there are a ton of athletes like that. And I've had conversations with them, with athletes like this before we started to work together. They've never had a coach because they always thought they could do it right, and they know what they're doing. They just have to keep doing it different every single time. But they'll figure it out. They don't need any help. Or some people don't need help. Some people got it. Some people do have it right. I mean, because listen, not everybody needs a coach. But understanding what you're not good at is such a strength. I mean, it takes humility and self-awareness, but like, you know what? I'm not good at this. You know what? Let me find somebody that can help me. Like, I know just enough about cars to make myself dangerous. I could easily make $100 fix into a brand new car by like switching a wiring and it like self-exploding in my garage. Like, there's just things that like I don't know, and frankly, I don't want to know. I just don't care. You know, so you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna pay you to do it for me because I know that you're gonna do it better than I am.
Or you can have your friend do it, and they could even make it worse. It's like the brother-in-law is going to come over and take care of. I had a buddy once that I had him change out my car stereo, and we put it in, and I turned the engine on, and we turned the radio on, and it started on fire. It ruined my car, basically.
But it is, and again, it's like it's understanding where you need help and what you're good at and what you're not good at, and then addressing it as such, and not pretending to be someone you're not, because then you just lose sight of who you really are by putting all your energy into being someone or something that not only that you're not, but that you just don't like really want to be, and that's where you waste all of your energy and your emotional. Your emotional energy into these things. And so again, like if you're looking to like make changes and do things, it's like stop being so self-critical and don't look at what other people are doing. Look at what you did good. And then let's see how we can apply those attributes to the other aspects of it. Get down to the nitty-gritty of it. Like, why did you do well in these things? Well, I enjoyed it. Oh, wait a minute. You enjoyed it and you loved it. Therefore, you do it. Okay, so let's find a way to enjoy and love. Like, that's one of the bigger focuses and sentences that really stuck out to me when I posted that article on about the pull buoy was the reason it's so crucial for so many athletes is because it makes them love to go to the pool.
Yeah. I know, and people feel guilty about that, man.
They feel guilty. I'm like, just shut up and stop listening to people who will tell you it's not because they're wrong. It's like, what's going to happen? Oh, I hate running because I can't run fast, so I just don't run. But then you're like, oh, we'll just run slower. And oh, look, I can run like 5 or 6 days a week, and I get faster. Okay, that works.
And then I really like it.
I really like it
because I don't feel like crap every time I get done running.
And then I can keep doing it, and I love it, and it's refreshing. Okay, let's apply that to swimming. I don't like because I keep getting out of breath, and I kick so hard, and I'm not going anywhere, and I just don't feel like I'm getting any faster. Okay, some for a pool boy. Oh, you went from 1 time a week and hating it to 3 to 4 times a week and liking it. And you wonder why you're getting faster. Like, so much of life is like removing these like idiotic obstacles that we put in our own way for no good reason, eliminating them, and like just clearing a simplistic path for success that, while might not seem, fantastic and something to write home about at once, it's gonna allow you to eventually arrive. So you may not be able to like write home every day about it, but maybe just keep writing it home, and then one day you're just gonna pull up to somebody's house and show up in person, be like, hey, guess what? Guess who's here? And that's how things should be. Like, remove the obstacles that like so many times we put in our own way, because there's enough to complain about in life in general. I think people complain about their most random stuff. There's enough of that. So stop creating your own obstacles by just being like, by almost being trying to be too creative. Just keep it simple and clear the path for clear everything out of the way that in order to give yourself the best chance of success. And while that might not be some big shiny new workout the next day, it's going to lead you to where you eventually want to go, because that is heading in the right direction. I think I actually used this phrase with an athlete this morning. It's so much better to be heading in the right direction but just be a little bit behind than to be in the right lane stalled out. Mm-hmm. And so many athletes do that. They get in the right lane and they keep overdoing it, so they just stall out and they just don't get any better and they get stale. Mm-hmm. I would much rather be 4 or 5 miles behind them, but in the right lane, go in the right direction. Mm-hmm. Because, again, like, I think most people would say this about road trips. The most part of the road trip isn't where you get to. It's like it's getting there. It's the conversations and the pit stops and the things you do. And that's also like when we talk about races. Like, yeah, the race is like something you remember, but it's all kind of a blur. But you've got like the previous like 9 months of training, and you remember back to all of these things. And it's always about the journey, not the destination. Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a saying, and I say it too because sometimes often it is hard for me, but life is hard, and we get that in our heads, but to me that life becomes harder. It's almost like on a continuum, hard being as far out to the right as possible, and easy being to the left. And if you put some kind of ridiculous goal and want to have that tomorrow, life is really hard, because it's frustrating. Mm-hmm. And things just don't seem to work out for you. And, I think back to times when I first started doing Ironman, and if you start thinking about doing an Ironman, as soon as you start training for one, that seems ridiculously hard. And that can be a frustrating thing. But if you don't look at it in terms of little steps and making small changes, and if you look at it that way, it can be kind of easy in a way. It's sort of that pull buoy thing, It's like if things feel easy, that doesn't mean they're not hard. In reality, I mean, you're doing, like Cody Beal said it in his about Mont Tremblant, right? He said on that second loop, he just felt like he was in a different world. It was kind of like a groove, and he was just floating along and just running like crazy, and it wasn't hard. He almost felt like he was in a dream state or something like that. And I just feel like that is such an important part of everything, is that, when I was doing my first Ironman, all I kept hearing about over and over and over was be careful of that 18-mile wall. Be careful of that 18-mile wall. It's going to hit you. You're going to be done. And so I had this going into my head, but I wouldn't let it get in there because I wasn't ready to, because I had never even run 18 miles at that point. And I got to that race, and I mean, I feel like the wall hit me at mile 1, because it was one of those things. And I wouldn't, I just didn't acknowledge how hard, like we feel like if making it hard or thinking it's going to be hard, it's not worthwhile. Mm-hmm. And that can be such a bad play on your mental state, I think. It's like, I always not laugh, but people sometimes will say to me, yeah, I felt really good on that second loop, and I was just running along, and I felt good. And for the longest time, I was like, what are you talking about? But I think that that's real, It's just, It doesn't have to be, if a 11-minute pace feels good and you're cruising along, I mean, you're going to end up with a nice run. And versus trying to stick your head in this, like, if I'm not dying out here and I can't, you can get there eventually. Just keep going along, and then just keep thinking about it getting easier in very, very small increments. Instead of going to the pool, like I'll do sometimes. If I have a goal, I want to, get my swim down to, 130, 100 meters or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I'm at 147, and I'm like, I got to get that to 130, and hopefully by the end of the week, then it just becomes, what in the hell am I doing to myself right now? But
yeah,
if I just kind of keep doing what I'm doing, Next thing I know, it's 145, 144. You know, it starts creeping down there, and it's a lot more fun. I think it's a lot more lasting. All these things. And then all of a sudden, then, you know, you get yourself down there in a natural way, and you take a few weeks off or a month off, and then you go back in the pool, and you're not that far off of that. But if you're just always trying to make these massive gains, I think that just sets you up for a you know, you almost have to do a complete reboot if you take time away. But it's it's like that thing growing up. You know, it's like you grow up and you build that into your I always say into your DNA, and it's just there. If you do it in a way that's sort of lasting and not like hack, like you talk about. You know, these hacks. That's the problem with them. I think is that you can kind of get elevated mentally and excited about them, and you change your, you know, synapses, and everything starts firing, and you're jacked up, and you can do just about anything for a week or two, but it doesn't really settle into who you are, and then all of a sudden it just goes completely away. And,
you know, because it's void of purpose. And you know, I think like if we all want to be honest, like no matter what, people always want to get better. You're never, more than likely, 99 out of 100 people listen to this podcast, so all of you, are always going to want to get better. You're gonna PR and you're gonna reach your PR, but then the next thing you're gonna do, all right, so next up I want to do this. So you're never going to be result satisfied. And even if you are, it's going to be for but a moment. Like once you get past like the completion part of something, it's now becomes on how great can I do it, or how much faster can I be it, or how much better can I do it. And then you're gonna get better at it, and then you know what you want to do again? Oh, I want to do even better. You know, I want to get even faster. I want it even quicker. You know, so you're always going to be like, no one's going to be like, just quit trying to improve, whether it's time or whether it's place in your age group, whatever it is. You're always going to be trying to move up and be faster and do better but so your target's always going to be moving in that aspect. So why not make like the simplest target of all, which is just simplifying and committing to succeed every day, your main goal? Because if you can do those things, everything else takes care of itself. And enjoying that part, because that's what you're going to spend 99% of your time doing, if not more, is the day in and day out stuff, not the races. It's the 90, but people obsess about the 1% and fail to account for the details and the commitment and the love and the journey and the dedication it takes to nail the 99%. They're just focused on that one day and that 1%. And they wonder why that it never ends up working out the way that they want it to.
The process, if you can make the process enjoyable or intriguing, that is so powerful, man. I'm going to go back to meditation one more time, because when you start in meditation, you know, the I don't want to say goal, but one of the things you want to, you try and turn inward and start looking inward at your sort of natural soul or whatever it is. And as you sit, and this is the thing that kind of comes to me, it's so intriguing, is that when I get into a practice, consistent practice, I can start getting further and further in, and you know, you just scratch the surface in the beginning, and you can kind of like get a little taste of what's coming down the pike and what's in there and whatever. And then the more you turn in, you can start to see an endless world of possibility, and that becomes the driver, and so to speak. So in trying to make that analogy with training and triathlon, there are so many little things that we can, you know, improve on, and the world is, it's like I was describing triathlon or Ironman is sort of the metaphor for life, in the sense that you never quite seem to figure it out. And if you can kind of make that the intrigue, then it becomes endlessly enjoyable to explore, instead of trying to just be retired with a lot of money and just sitting around in your life. You know what I mean? It's like if you can get that sort of like, I need to work my whole life to just retire and sit around, instead of I need to explore life and all the possibilities and all the things that we can do and try and see and whatever, then that's the essence. It's not about the end game.
Mm-hmm. The essence, not the end game. I like that.
Thank you.
That's a new shirt.
The essence, not the end game.
The essence, not the. It sounds like a cologne for men.
Essence.
The essence.
It does. It's like the ocean. Kramer's.
Like Tarrolly.
What was Kramer's? The ocean or the beach?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, something like that.
Have you been to the beach? No, it's just my new cologne.
That's my new cologne. It's so awesome. But yeah, if you like what we're doing, or even just kind of okay with what we're doing, check us out on iTunes, subscribe, leave us a review, give us your feedback. You can always just click on crushingiron.com to find out everything there is to know about basically everything we do, from training camps to swim analysis, blog, videos, our athletes, training and coaching packages. And you can also, the most popular tab these days is the club tab. You can always click on that. This is our last month for that before the price goes up January 1st. So no, I'm talking to a lot of athletes who are waiting. No need to wait, as this last month isn't going to count against your year. So get started, get in, get set up. That way you're ready to rock on January 1st instead of playing catch up, because there's no better day than today to get started with basically doing anything, no matter what it is. Mm-hmm. Because the longer you wait, the longer you're going to keep waiting, and the farther you're going to be behind. So click on that tab. There's so many good things about the club. We've got close to 40 people in the club already. We're doing some really awesome, fun things with that. Go to the store on the Crushing Iron page. Check out. We got some new shirts to check out. We'll have the Essence cologne shirt. We'll have the smell imprinted in the shirt, so you'll never have to actually apply it. It will just be a perfumed shirt you can wear for kind of like when you leave Waffle House. You smell like Waffle House for like days. It'll be something like that.
The essence of Waffle House.
The essence of Waffle House. So check that out. And then obviously, as usual, if you have any questions at all, you can always reach out to Mike directly, crushingiron@gmail.com. Or if you have any questions or feedback for me as well, you can always reach me at c26coach@gmail.com.
That pretty much sums it up, brother.
All right, dude. And we will check you on Thursday for episode 222.
You nailed it.
Nailed it. All right. Better end on that one.
All right. Have a great day with your door guy or roof
Thanks,
guy.
Door.
All right.
Yeah, third time's a charm.
They'll get it.
They'll get it. All right, man. See ya.
See ya.